Are you ready, Tim?
Thank you, Judge. Tell us your name, spell your last name for the record, please.
Emily Thorndike, Thorndike.
And what town do you live in?
I actually live in Brooklyn, New York, but I summer on Cape Cod. I'm spoiled like that, so I'm in Chatham.
So where do you live now?
Brooklyn.
But where you live, are you?
In Chatham.
Chatham.
Yes.
And what do you do for work?
I own my own therapy practice right now, so I'm practicing as a business owner and a therapist.
And what is the name of the business?
It's called Wise Mind Therapy Practice.
What is it?
Wise Mind.
Wise Mind?
Yep.
Okay. And where is that located?
It's a virtual practice, so yeah.
And how long have you been doing that?
So I had my own private practice I opened that January 2023, and then this past May I expanded. I hired somebody, so technically it's a group practice, but I've owned my own business technically for, 4 years?
And what degrees do you have?
So I have my master's in I have my BA in sociology. I have my master's in social work, and then I have 2 social work licenses, I guess. You have to get one before the other. So I only go by a licensed independent clinical social worker. But you have to get it's very confusing. You have to get 2 licenses essentially.
You have those licenses?
Yes.
Within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts?
Yes.
Now, your employment, can you tell us what your employment history was since I guess you got your master's at BC or something?
Since I got my master's at BC, I did my final year internship at McLean Hospital at their trauma program. And then once I graduated, got my MSW, my master's of social work, and then my social work license, I was offered a per diem position at that program. And I did that position for, I think it was 2 to 3 months. And then I was rehired. I went back to the short-term unit at McLean, which I had previously worked at.
Now, so are you familiar with this case of Lindsay Clancy?
I'm only familiar about it from what I watched before I was sequestered, but other than that, I don't know the case at all.
And when you say what you watched before you were sequestered, what does that mean? What did you watch?
I think it was not this past Thursday, but the one before that. I'm not going to recall the date off the top of my head, but that's when you had told me that I'm sequestered and to no longer watch the trial or consume any of it.
So what were you watching?
I had just been watching like the day-to-day, like the live stream and just, yeah.
Why is that?
I'm interested in the case. I honestly got into sort of watching trials from the Karen Reed trial, and then I wanted to watch this case, and obviously, I worked at McLean, so I was curious to watch it. They're the same unit, but there's a south side and a north side, if that makes sense.
When you were working in that particular unit, is that the same unit that Lindsay Clancy was in for the 4 to 5 day period?
Yes, I worked on both north and south for a significant amount of time.
And for all those years that you worked there, did you work days, nights, weekends, holidays?
So days and evenings, I preferred the evening shift, but you're supposed to do both, day and evening. I didn't do night. Sometimes you get mandated and you have to work an evening and a night shift, which is always pretty brutal, but I was day and evening.
You indicated that you, because of your interest, were watching the proceedings on this case.
Yes.
On what, YouTube or something? Or
whatever
TV?
You can, yeah.
And you had the occasion to hear the cross-examination of Patrick Clancy by the district attorney, is that
yes.
right?
You mean the direct?
I'm sorry?
The direct of the
Sorry,
Clancy.
you're right. It's been a long week. Okay, direct examination. And the focus was on the fact that when Lindsay went into the hospital, it was on New Year's Eve. Is that correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that she was there for that holiday weekend, and then I think the following Monday was a holiday?
Yes.
Okay. And you heard the direct examination of the district attorney asking about McLean being number 1 hospital in the country, McLean having all of these services available to the inmates that are in there, treating them, offering all these fantastic programs on the holiday weekends and the holidays, as opposed to what Patrick had testified to. See that?
We re-asked that question. I think I understand, but.
Okay, when you were watching on the television, you saw, or the computer, you saw the questioning of the district attorney of Patrick Clancy.
Yep.
You heard Patrick Clancy make reference to the fact that his wife admitted herself into the STU on holiday weekend, New Year's.
Yes.
Was there all that weekend.
Right.
Into a holiday.
Right.
And the district attorney then questioning Patrick inquired as to whether he was aware that it was the best hospital in the country, that there were many doctors and nurses and staff available and programs available, and Lindsay wasn't interested in any of that, right?
Yes, that's what I took from it.
Now, in your 8 however many years of experience that you had, is that what your understanding was in that unit?
No, that's not what I was understanding, no.
So tell the judge what your understanding was from your experience, hands-on, day after day, working in the STU for all of those years.
Right.
But you also were a supervisor of the STU at one time.
I actually wasn't. I became a social worker there. So I guess you could, one way to look at it is that, the social worker and the psychiatrist, you are the treatment team. So you're making all the decisions for the patients. And so the nurses and the mental health specialists, I don't like to create a hierarchy, but they are operating underneath you. So in a way I'm supervising, but I was never a direct supervisor.
Now, you came out with a TikTok or
I did.
a reel or whatever you call it.
Yeah, TikTok.
And would you agree with me that you were pretty angry when you did that?
Yeah, definitely emotional.
So tell the judge, why were you emotional when you did that TikTok?
Well, it's a lengthy TikTok. It's about 10 minutes. And I was emotional because I felt like what was discussed in court was not aligned with what my experience was. I noted several things. I'll try to summarize some of them. There was mention that there's individual therapy on the unit. There is not. There was mention of seeing a doctor every day. I felt like there was some misleading of that. You do see a doctor every day, but on the weekends and on a holiday, it's one doctor who's seeing all of the patients. The meetings can be as short as 1 minute. Many patients decline those meetings. And the doctor who's there on the weekend and holidays is seeing 23 patients. So I felt it was misleading to indicate that there's sort of a in-depth doctor session when it's very brief.
How about programs that are offered, like making things out of clay and crayons and stuff like that?
Yes, there's clay on the unit. It's called Model Magic. It's a non-toxic kid. It's it's advertised for kids, but it's on the unit. It's in the nursing station. It's out on the unit. There is a lot of coloring. There's a specific group that I saw in the documents I reviewed called Music and Mandalas. Mandalas are basically adult coloring books. The designs are kind of abstract. You could compare it to like looking through a kaleidoscope or something, and you color them in. And Music and Mandalas is a group where you play music and the patients color.
So you understand from watching the proceedings that you became emotional over is that Lindsay went in on New Year's Eve with some fairly serious
Right.
symptomology. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Patrick indicated that they were, quite frankly, pretty bluntly disgusted with the help and the care that was allegedly offered to her, right?
Right.
And you were upset about what you felt was a misleading of this witness based on the questions that were asked. Is that right?
Yes.
And Patrick had made reference to the fact that she was doing coloring and she was in the groups that were sitting there dealing with the clay, and that basically they felt that it was not bluntly any help.
Yes, and there's very minimal like family contact when the main treatment team is not there, so it's not abnormal that families wouldn't be getting like regular or like in-depth updates of what's going on. You're sort of supposed to wait until the treatment team comes back, whether it's on a Monday or in this case a Tuesday, since Monday was a holiday. That's the team who's going to be working with the patient, so most updates and communication with family and with providers aren't going to happen over the weekend either.
Now, one of the things that occurred, just for the background, is that your TikTok was observed by me, and I tried to reach out to you and
Yes.
couldn't find you.
That's correct.
And then I had a private investigator, Bob Jones,
Yes.
hunt you down, kind of, and ended up in front of your house.
No, Bob and I were sort of chuckling about that because he never ended up outside of my house, but the rest of it is all accurate. So he wasn't outside of my house, but the rest of that was true.
So he was able to locate you.
He was,
He
yes.
was able to talk to you,
He was, yes.
get your contact information.
Yes.
Provide that to me.
Yep.
And as a result of that, I reached out to you, and then you indicated that you initially somewhat reluctant, but then ultimately agreed to get involved and talk to the judge, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now, the district attorney is objecting to your testimony, and I believe they're going to argue that the change from that 1 year period, when did you leave working there?
I want to say my last date was like December 18th. I since working there, you don't get a lot of holidays off. So out of all my time there, I said, I'm going to leave right before the holidays and be able to enjoy that. So I believe it was December 18th, but mid-December, 2021.
2021.
Yeah.
And when was Lindsay in there?
December 31st, right? She came in on New Year's Eve, what would that be? 2022, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So in your opinion, is there a change that is significant in the staffing, in the nurse to patient ratio, in the safety issues, the crayons, the coloring and all of that. Is there any change from that 1 year that you left to the time that she was in there?
From the records I reviewed as well, those are exactly the same staffing ratios, and all of the groups are the same.
So there's no change whatsoever?
Not from what I can tell from what I reviewed.
Thank you.
Hey, Como?
Good afternoon.
Hello.
So you are currently a social worker who does their own, a licensed independent clinical social worker, right? That's
Yes.
the license.
Title,
So when
yeah.
you're saying
Yes.
that's really what you kind of go by.
Yes, I'm a social worker by trade, you could say, but I'm practicing as a therapist.
And you do that virtually.
Yes.
So you don't have a brick and mortar where clients come and engage in therapy with you, right?
No, rent is expensive, so right now I'm all virtual.
And you came aware of this case by watching the trial, right?
Yes.
And so would you say that how many days of the trial did you watch?
All of them up until that point.
At what point? What day?
I'm not remembering the date exactly. Not last Thursday, but the Thursday before.
What was the last content of testimony that you remember watching?
I believe it was maybe Patrick's friends, or I was aware that there were doctors testifying. Mr. Reddington made sure I was not watching anymore, and that there were doctors coming up that were particularly important for me to not watch.
And you were asked by Attorney Reddington here about observing that testimony or the direct examination of Patrick. And I think he mentioned where it was referred to that McLean was the best hospital in the country. Do you recall that being the question that was asked of Patrick Clancy?
I don't recall.
And in fact, the Commonwealth didn't ask about his opinions of the status of the hospital, but did just verify with reference to records whether or not he knew his wife participated in particular things that were contained within the records. Did you see that in the testimony?
Yes.
And so you're aware that the testimony actually was that, or the question was, were you aware that she declined groups?
Yes.
And that's based on records you've never seen, right?
Correct.
And as far as the contact with the staff and the doctors, meaning nurses or social workers or whatnot, you haven't reviewed any of those records, right?
I have not.
And so you don't know the extent of what the interaction was with the nurse and the patient, do you?
I mean, there are some general guidelines that you have to follow. I can't tell you the content within them, but for example, mental health specialists, you're not supposed to meet with a patient longer than 20 minutes because you have other things to do. So I can't speak specifically to what happened in those conversations, but I know the general gist of how everybody's role works.
But you, when you say everybody's role, did you ever perform the role of a nurse?
No, but I work directly with them. I'm operating on the job description. It says specifically you're under the direction of the nurse. So I worked directly with nurses.
Do you go through the same training as a nurse?
No.
As far as what your knowledge is of mental health specialists, fair to say the last time you were employed as a mental health specialist there and did that work yourself was in May of 2019.
Yep.
And then you transitioned to being a social worker where you worked closely with the psychiatrist and primarily Monday through Friday.
Yeah, psychiatrists, the nurses, and the mental health specialists, you all really work together.
And you can only attest to what you would put in a note, right? As far as your contact with a patient as a social worker.
No, you have access to all of the patients on the unit. So I'm able, and it's not a HIPAA violation to do that because we all work together. Sometimes I cover other social workers' patients. So I do have access. You have access to all of the records in every patient's file. So you can read everybody's notes.
I guess my question, and that probably was a bad question, but my question is to you. When you are the social worker for a patient on the treatment team that you've described,
Yep.
you enter the information into the note for the social worker that becomes part of the record.
Correct.
And those are your words, your observations, your contact.
Correct.
You don't write them for other people, do you?
No, but we have to follow a certain format. So, for example, we have to write a biopsychosocial note, which is a fairly lengthy assessment, but that's a social work. I learned that in grad school, so I don't know how everybody writes their notes, but we have to follow a pretty strict format to write our notes.
And is it your testimony that McLean requires only that each social worker spends a particular period of time or a max amount of time with each patient to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I have 8 patients on my caseload, so I have to see 8 patients every day. And so you are limited with how much time you can spend with them because there's several other tasks I have to do. So you really can't spend a significant amount of time with your patients.
But that wasn't my question. My question was, does McLean tell you that you can only spend 5, 10, or 15 minutes with a patient?
Yes, it's directly told from the people above me. It's something that's communicated in a way where you could sort of get in trouble if you're not doing that. So yes, it comes directly from McLean.
And do you have any information, having left there in 2021, that the same people supervising the social workers were giving those same instructions?
I mean, no, I don't know that.
Mr. Rankin, I'll hear you on the motion. You may step down. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I think it's obvious that the witness has an educational background. Certainly has the experience, interestingly enough, of that very unit that Lindsay was on for that period of time. Is well aware of the staffing, indicated to you that the staffing ratio to patient, et cetera, has not changed according to the items that the government has brought here today. That at the time that she was there, it was on a weekend. She indicated about the the weekend staffing, the holiday staffing. Indicated that they have these coloring programs and programs that Patrick was relating to, and indicates the skeleton crew, if you will, in a sense, on that particular period of time in the holidays, which is very corroborative of what Patrick had indicated in his testimony. So, I'm not looking to bring her in to disparage McLean Hospital. They've done a good job of that themselves. I'm bringing her in to just have evidence as to what Patrick's testimony was relating to what his wife went through when she was in McLean, to corroborate the fact, as opposed to what was raised on direct exam with the government when they were questioning him about all of these wonderful programs that she apparently was not interested in participating in, which is very, very, I would argue, improper inference for the jury to consider.
All right. Kamal?
Runner, would object to the witness, and even now after the voir dire, I think it's clear that the best evidence of what the defendant was provided by way of care, treatment, however you want to call it, is the record in and of itself. It's the record from McLean that documents each and every contact she had with each and every person that was on staff during the time period she was there. Now, just to be clear, there's been some indication that she went there on the 31st of December, but the records are clear to say she was transported, and she didn't arrive at McLean until the early morning hours of January 1st. So that's when the records start, and they document her each and every day and each and every step of the way, consistent with how Dr. Goodhart described the process of how you're in intake and then how you go through the day and what the general schedule is in the contact with the treatment team. This witness is offering no more information than what's contained within the record, and no more information that's what's contained in the records that were just received for the trial subpoena. And I would suggest to you that the fact that she, in her last role as a social worker from 2019 to 2021, where she was a day staff person that worked Monday through Friday, that wasn't there on the weekends, that she does have a limited amount of information, and it's attenuated, more attenuated than we had initially believed, from the dates in which the defendant was at this particular hospital. So I would suggest, or I would object and argue that the best evidence is the records in and of themselves, the records that now have been subpoenaed that can be admitted to identify the particular staff. I'd also like to point out that counsel is referring to offering this to rebut certain inferences or certain statements that the Commonwealth made in the direct examination of Mr. Clancy, but no one has said that McLean is a #1 hospital. That wasn't the testimony, that wasn't the question put before him. It was simply what he knew, what he observed, and if he knew what was contained within the record. So there's been no presentation of evidence that would suggest that.
All right. Well, I'm looking at this really as a kind of two issues. First is late disclosure of the witness, and I'm not, and that goes into a whole different analysis, and also analysis under Rule 403, which is relating to relevant evidence. And as that proposed rule says, evidence may be excluded if its probative value is substantially outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice, confusion of the issues, or misleading the jury, or by considerations of, that part doesn't apply. First off, I find this witness credible. I find that, and I appreciate her being willing to offer the information that she has, but that's not always the whole finding on this. And so under cases such as Taylor versus Illinois, Commonwealth versus Dunning, Commonwealth versus Steinmeier, a couple other cases, I have to look at a number of factors. The first is prevention of surprise. Well, the Commonwealth has been aware of this issue for at least a week or so, so I'm not considering that. Evidence of bad faith, there's no bad faith I see from either side in naming this or calling this person at this time. Is the prejudice to the other party. I think there's just limited prejudice, if any, to the Commonwealth. However, though, the final two are the issues that I think are more relevant in this. One is the materiality of the testimony in this. And I find that there's limited materiality, that's hard to say, because mainly this witness hadn't worked there for a year. So there's at least a gap between when she worked there and when the relevant time period is here. There's also, I imagine, different personnel. They're working on different shifts. And so there's kind of limited value to that testimony. I also, I don't remember any five-star type inferences. In fact, so I'm not going to, that's going to be measured by the jury. But I didn't see any mentions that this was a five-star facility. And then also the concern is, or the factor is, the effectiveness of less severe sanctions. And I would find that the records that have been brought in pursuant to the subpoena in the last couple of days from McLean's talks about the staffing levels on holidays and not on holidays. So if there's a question of whether or not there was a quote unquote skeleton crew that was on for those, at least the first 2 days of this time that Ms. Clancy was there, that's reflected in the records. There also in the records here is a list of whatever programs were offered and also when they were offered. So if there's a question of less programs being offered on a holiday than during the week, those are contained in the records. And so I'm going to deny the defendant's motion to call this witness, but I am going to allow the defendant, if the defendant wishes, to submit those McLean's records specifically regarding the staffing and the programs that are available, not just on that weekend, but for the week. And I think there's records in there for the week before. So there could be a comparison between what was available to Ms. Clancy during the week and what was available to her on a holiday weekend. So that's going to be my finding. I'll issue a written ruling on this, but I just kind of wanted to give the parties at least some idea, as well as the witness who's been here, I know, a couple of days. I just kind of wanted to thank her for that. So with that, we'll be in recess till 2:15. We'll come back and resume the trial. Okay?
Thank you. What? All eyes?
I know it's a technicality, no way objection.
Duly noted. Thank you.